Hi, my name's Joe, or better yet, I'm a friend of Bob's. There he is, yeah. I'm super happy that you're here. There's not a better time to be here than now, because when we look at the state of retirement, retirement planning is really still young. If you think about it, this idea of planning for retirement is only about 50 years old, and we're still gathering data. And there's some people in this room who've done a lot of that work. I mean, Fritz is here, right? Karsten's here, Frank is here. There's so many people here that are working on this, and I want to talk about really what the happiest retirees know. Because the bad news is, although we've been trying to do this for 50 years, a lot of us are getting it wrong. And what's sad is there's some things that we can fix fairly easy. We're not going to do it in 20 minutes, but we're going to give it a big try. Who's with me? Everybody ready? All right, let's do this. This is Exhibit A. This came out just a couple of years ago. You might have seen this headline in the Wall Street Journal. And just to give you the case here, if you didn't read it, what they said is, when we get ready to retire, our mortality expectation rises. Let's put that in economy speak. You retire, you die. Who's here to learn how to do that, right? We're here for that breakout session. How do I just die? Let's just get it over with, right? So, and it's funny because I was so pissed off about this headline that I did a show on this when it first came out, and we did another one just a couple months ago. And I asked one of our contributors on a roundtable, Jesse Kramer from the Best Interest podcast, I said, do you agree with this? We shouldn't retire early because the fine people at the Wall Street Journal say we retire early, we die. And he said, well, let me give you an example, Joe, and this is going to actually be really good because here we are on a college campus right now. He said, the analogy is, if you think you might have a problem with alcohol, there's a lot of alcohol on college campuses. So the correlation is, if you don't want to have a problem with alcohol, don't go to college, right? And we laugh about that and we think it's ridiculous, but some of the smartest minds in retirement planning came up with, let's just not retire early. Not the solution we want. Second case, I read this maybe in August on the Wealthy Accountant blog. I'd always seen the case for life expectancy and planning around our life expectancy. I spent 16 years as a financial planner, and we'd always talk about these golden years about what we were going to do, right? Women live until their early 80s, men till their late 70s. That really doesn't matter as much as this statistic. Wealthy Accountant blog talks about this idea of healthy life expectancy. And if you wait until normal retirement age of 67 so that you're getting big time Social Security checks, right? And we're living on that, our healthy retirement in the US is 66. So we spend our whole life working in this job we might not love, and we get to retirement and we're not healthy to do the stuff that we want to do. More of a case against that Wall Street Journal piece. So let's talk about what the happiest retirees know and some of their habits. Habit number one is connections. They focus on connections. So we're going to start there, but I want to introduce to you this construct that we have on the Stacking Benjamin show that I'm bringing to economy. We're going to call this the TikTok Minute. Everybody familiar with our TikTok Minute? TikTok Minute, for those of you not familiar with the Stacking Benjamin show, this is where we shine the light every week on a creator who's either showing us something that is brilliant or, more likely on TikTok, air quotes brilliant, right? So, who thinks we're about to see brilliance about connections from this gentleman? I kind of set that up wrong, didn't I? Who thinks we might see air quotes brilliance? Who's not going to raise their hand no matter what the hell I say? There we go. Those are my introvert friends right there. Well, all right, let's introduce Connect. This guy wants to make a connection, and he needs your help. So let's take a look.
1 in 5 Arkansas men do not know where their next beer is going to come from. It's very sad. With your contribution of just 69 cents per day, you can alleviate all the stress of all the Arkansas beer drinkers out there. And your contribution of just 69 cents a day, upon donation, we'll send you a picture of your sponsored beer drinker. Not only that, we'll send you a monthly updates of statistics, exactly how your money was spent and how it helped beer drinker you sponsored. We appreciate all the help you can do. It's for the kids.
I don't know if I love It's for the Kids better or the Sarah McLachlan in the background better, right? But you know what's funny? In his hilarity, he makes a great point, which is the happiest retirees have connections that are bigger than themselves. They think bigger than just my own happiness, and that adds to a lot of longevity. There have been a lot of studies on that. But it's interesting. When I was a financial planner, I'd always ask people what their goals were, right? What are your goals? What do you want to do? And we focus a lot on goals. And if you begin with goals versus begin with safe withdrawal rate, as an example, I think your goals then become sticky, and it's easier to design a plan that works to get those goals. But you know what? It turns out the happiest retirees don't even start with goals, they start with connections. Because it turns out that we need people, and we mess this up in a big, big way when we plan. Because we see people who are maybe working at a job they love in their 70s. And what do we say as a society? We say, what the hell are they still doing here? They should be off by themselves, right? They deserve to be off by themselves in a corner. I'll give you an example. I got a friend named Todd who is roughly my age, and he's in the I deserve it phase, like many of us, and he's starting to plan his next steps. He and his spouse, Christy, they bought a beautiful cabin on a hill right at the spine of a lake about 2 hours north of where I live in beautiful Arkansas. And it just looks all the way down the lake. And in the spring and in the fall, it's amazing all year round, but it's super amazing in the spring and in the fall. And as they were fixing up this cabin, and then they decided to tear down the cabin, and now they're building a beautiful 3,000 square foot house there that they want to retire to. What's wild about that is that for many of us, you go, well, that sounds great. That sounds like a dream. Here's the problem. Todd has this network of friends, and we've all been talking about Todd a lot. We don't see Todd anymore. We never see Todd. And we forget to invite Todd to things. And Todd even mentioned the last time I saw him, he's like, I haven't seen you in forever. I'm like, dude, it's because you're never around. Because you deserve it, right? You deserve to isolate. The number one demographic who commits suicide is men over age 70. That's how serious this is. We need connections. What does this mean to us? We throw around terms in our community like geo-arbitrage, right? If I can't afford to live where I am, I'm just going to quickly geo-arbitrage. And AKA, I'm going to go to this place where I know nobody, I know nothing about anything, and I'm just going to move there, and it's going to be unicorns and rainbows. I love geo-arbitrage, but you know what I really love? Is connecting where you are today. And this isn't my idea. This is a guy named Benjamin Brandt, who's a financial planner in North Dakota. He talks about beginning retirement right now. And he talks about even if you're miles away from financial independence, every time you go on a vacation, every time you're looking at your budget, whatever you're doing, you're tying these goals you have for later to what you're doing today. So if your goal is geo-arbitrage, that next vacation, go to that place. Look at the community. See if you actually like these people. Is there going to be things for you to do? Is there going to be stuff for you to love? Because the worst thing is to get to this golden era and realize that you've got no people, no connections, and this place you thought was going to be beautiful is an absolute hell. In fact, Wes Moss, who was nice enough to let me borrow the talk of this from his book, which, by the way, is great, What the Happiest Retirees Know. Wes points out that the happiest retirees volunteer for at least 3 groups, different groups every year. The happiest retirees formally belong to at least one group, like a Rotary Club, a Kiwanis Club, maybe some group attached to a religious organization, but they formally belong, and they're in this mission. And they travel a decent amount, but they travel at least once per year with people outside of their immediate family. They're worried about connections, and that's what the happiest people have. In fact, other studies show this. Anna Corwin, who's a researcher at UCLA, was on our show. She talked about how Catholic nuns live almost a full decade longer than the average person. You know why? Because they don't retire. They have this mission that's bigger than they are. So, happiest retirees, keep it moving. Second, happiest retirees work on a different math. There's one math when you're pre-FI, and there's another math after you get to FI. So, to talk about this, let's talk about math. Anybody been to the grocery store lately? Welcome back to my TikTok minute. We're going to see on TikTok, this is a reel. Who thinks we're about to see brilliance? You're like, I want to get fooled by that again. Some of these will be brilliant. Who thinks we're going to see air quotes brilliance? I really don't know which one this is, but I found this in December. I think this should say grocery shopping in 2025. Let's talk about math.
Find everything you need today?
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Oh, God. No.
Everything okay, ma'am?
It's just that you've only scanned a few items and it's already $60. I'm so scared.
Okay, I'm a trained professional, ma'am. I've scanned a lot of groceries. I need you to stay with me.
It's just that my in-laws are in town and they want a charcuterie board.
This isn't gonna be easy, so I need you to be brave, all right? What's your name?
Patricia.
Trisha, all right. I need you to take a deep breath. We're about to do the cheese.
Oh, my God. The numbers are going up so fast. Why do we have to be on Balderson's house?
Don't look up there. It only makes it worse. Keep your eyes on me, okay?
Can't you just scan something less expensive?
I can, but let's not forget, it's the little things that add up, all right? Now brace yourself. I'm about to do the mixed nuts.
Oh, my God. I'm going to pass out.
Okay, bite down on this, Patricia. Get ready. I'm gonna do the cured meats.
No, stop. I can't do this anymore.
It's too late. There's a line behind you, okay? You're locked in.
I'm not strong enough.
I know it looks like a lot right now, but I promise you, you're gonna get home and you're gonna wonder, what did I even buy? You've got this, Patricia. Get ready. I'm gonna weigh the grapes.
Oh, what have you done to me, you son of a...
Okay, your total's $257.84.
Oh, no.
You gotta dig deep. This is the hardest part. Patricia, it's time to pay.
I love their work at Better Than Bread. By the way, this is the serious work I get to do at Stacking Benjamins. Look for this stuff, serious research. I love the point here, and I think this is a point where that we largely in our community we nail this, right? He said it's the little things that add up. It's the little things. And when we waste money on crap that we don't care about, we never get those big things, right? We never get to the big stuff. And when I'm worried about the price of eggs, I really got to wonder whether the charcuterie tray is something I want or not, right? So we get that part right. Let's talk about, though, how the math kind of changes here so that we continue to get this right. Let's do a little case study. Jane has reached FIRE. Jane has $2.2 million saved. She also has Social Security that's going to come in at $3,000 a month, rental income of $1,000 a month, wants to live on $80,000 a year. Quick math, can she do it? Absolutely, she can do it. She got $185,000 left on a mortgage at 3.2%. Does she pay it off? What's interesting, and I'm not going to answer that question yet, what's interesting is the math changes over time. This woman is Lisa Peterson. Lisa has a great book called The Mindful Millionaire about mindfulness. And Lisa's view on that story problem changed maybe 15 years ago. And I'd like to share how it changed. Lisa was on the third story of this medical complex waiting for her doctor, and the elevator's right behind her. And Lisa's angry. She's a working financial planner, and her doctor, of course, is 20 minutes late. She doesn't have time for this crap. So she is leafing angrily through this magazine, just waiting for her name to be called, when the elevator dings behind her. It's the middle of summer in Arizona. Imagine how hot it is. And a gentleman gets off the elevator in a trench coat, full-on trench coat, and he starts striding back to the door with the exam rooms. And the receptionist stands up and goes, "Sir, you can't go back there." And the guy turns to her and turns to everybody and opens up the trench coat, and he has guns. And that day the doctor died, and that day the nurse died, and that day the math changed for Lisa. Because Lisa realized that once you reach your FIRE number, once you get to the point that you can make it, it isn't about the money anymore. And too often we're obsessed with the money when we should be obsessed with, Lisa's obsession, mindful time, because we don't know how much time we have. We have no idea. That healthy life expectancy number is 66. We don't know how long we're going to be healthy. We want to be here every moment that we can be here. We want to be present. We want to be thinking about not all these little pebbles while we're waiting in line, right? We want to buy the charcuterie tray if it's important to us and not worry about that. It's not about the money. It's about the mindfulness. And so the happiest retirees, They're not dumb, but they pay off that debt. They get the arbitrage number. They totally understand it. But you know what? I get rid of that because that's a mosquito bite and I don't need it anymore. And now I'm not worried at all about these little things. I can spend more time, you and me, just being present in that moment. Don't get me wrong, until then, it's important to be optimized toward the money. But once you get there, the happiest retirees change that math. They do get, though, scientific when it comes to their investing. But they get scientific in kind of a different way than you might think. It's not going to be spend hours and hours looking at their portfolio. But let's take a look. Let's go back to my TikTok minute, huh? How many people, I hear you going, oh God. How many people think these two geniuses I shouldn't have said geniuses. These two geniuses have just figured out a way to create a ton of cash flow for their retirement. Who thinks we're about to see brilliance? I actually think this one is brilliant, but who thinks it's air quotes brilliant? I think this is probably both. These are two of my favorite comedians, Key and Peele.
Now, I know this plan is foolproof. Check this out. First of all, you and me start working at the bank. Doesn't matter the position, okay? Just so long as we get in there, right? Then we just go there every day, do the work, gain their trust until we get them in the palm of our hand.
All right. That's how we get the money.
That's the beauty of it, bro. They deposit the money into our bank accounts. Week after week, month after month. They're not even gonna know they being robbed. And then 20, 30 years later, we walk out the front door like nothing even happened.
Mother, that's called a job.
That's the secret to economy. Thank you for coming. Just work a dead-end job for 30 years, you're good, right? That's why we're all here. That method might not work, or it might not work the way that we want. And it might be the reason why we're all here today is to not do that strategy. Wes, my buddy Wes, also said this, and this is probably good timing. The happiest retirees are not robbing banks, but they're also not sitting around right now while the market tends to be gyrating a little more than it has, right? It always gyrates some, but lately, a little more. Nothing makes me sadder, by the way, than some of the things I've seen in online forums the last couple weeks. We're 4 years away from retirement, and how could this happen now? I'm thinking about retiring at the end of this year. How could this happen now? Happiest retirees are tomorrow investors, not today investors, meaning they have money that is long-term in the spots for long-term, which means stock market, right? Any money they need for the short term, if they're retiring in 4 years or next year or whatever, they're not worried about that because they know that that money is in a safe place and they can go ahead and follow through on that plan. If you're online worried about, I'm retiring in 4 years and how could this happen, I think you need to look at your investment policy statement. The key to a happy retirement then is obviously not this. This is one of my favorite old cartoons, right? I have a family member, I almost said what type of family member that this is, and I realize this is being recorded. And if he sees this, I'm not talking about you, by the way, family member. His spouse will tell you, he retired at 47. His spouse will tell you he's miserable. His daughter will tell you he's miserable. My spouse will have my kid. I'll stand here today and tell you he is miserable. He will tell you he's having the time of his life, and I will tell you he is wrong. He's incredibly depressed. He spends over half his day staring at his computer and shaking, worried about every penny instead of the mindfulness that we talked about before. He's not a tomorrow investor. He's a today investor. And I know there might be some of you in this room that are that. I know that we all know people like that, right? We do not want that. That's on one end. But on the other side, we have to apply a little science, or we should apply a little science, because we know that by budgeting well, we're able to get those big rocks and avoid those little pebbles that get in the way. We also know that by having a spending plan, we also know that by getting our estate in order, we know all these things, that by just spending a little bit of time, it makes a big difference. We can do the same thing by spending just about 15 minutes a year on our investments to make a big difference. Now, when we start off as investors, this is a great option. This is where I think you should begin as an investor. Those of you that know me know that I'm not a fan of target date funds. I'm also not a fan of robo-advisors for the most part. especially when you start out. This great gentleman named J.L. Collins wrote this brilliant book called The Simple Path to Wealth. If you haven't read The Simple Path to Wealth, you need to read this, because it will affirm what J.L. Collins was talking about and who he was talking to. And I think some of us have forgotten who J.L. Collins was actually talking to. J.L. Collins didn't call it the optimal path to wealth. He didn't call it the efficient path to wealth. He called it the simple path to wealth. And why? He was trying to metaphorically put his arms around young people, his daughter especially, who he wrote the book for, and say, you know what? You don't got to worry about NVIDIA. You don't got to worry about crypto. You don't got to worry about all this stuff. If you just own a little bit of everything, you're going to be okay. Life is going to be okay. And it is kick-ass. You don't need a robo-advisor. You don't need a target date fund. Somehow, though, some of us extrapolated that into, I should VTSAX and chill for life. And that is every bit as wasteful as a wasteful budget is. It's funny, I used to be very polite about this, and about a year and a half ago, some of you might have heard me on the Afford Anything show, I gave up being polite, and I said, VTSAX and chill is stupid. And then I blew up the internet a little bit. And it's not. For the right person, it's great. But a guy named Nick Majuli of Dollars and Data fame wrote this wonderful book about just keep investing. And until you get to about $100,000, it matters more that you're just putting money away. That matters. VTSAX, shovel money in, you don't have to be scientific. But after that, after you get to $100,000, the delta between VTSAX and not VTSAX and doing something more scientific, there's a huge difference there. And it doesn't take a lot of time. You know, we talk about mindfulness. They pay off their debt to be mindful. You don't want to be managing your portfolio every day. But once you get this set up, it takes about 15 minutes a year. And we'll tell you what you get in exchange for 15 minutes a year. So I want to start, because this science goes way deeper than I can go in the next 5 minutes. But it's called The Efficient Frontier. It's a great place to start in your research. The Efficient Frontier won a Nobel Prize. A gentleman named Dr. Harry Markowitz won the Nobel Prize for this. And he showed that no matter what your goal is, the rate of return you need, no matter what your tax situation, there is a most efficient mix of assets that historically has gotten you there. So what he did was showed it on an X and Y axis. So going from south to north, he showed some investments at very low returns and some have very high returns, right? As he noticed returns went higher, what else did he show went up? Risk, right? So he showed risk going from left to right. So if we put VTSAX as a dot, let's say it's right there, right? Now, I am a fanboy of all this. I think this is sexy, this talk. I know there's a few of you in there. Where's Frank? Frank thinks this is sexy. This is very sexy, isn't it? So I imagine like Markowitz is sitting like it's like 10:30 at night, and he puts this dot on. He's like, I think I'm onto something. And he pours himself a Cabernet and puts on some Barry White. And then he goes, you know what if we did half stocks, half bonds? Where's that dot? Oh, wait a minute. 1/3 small cap, 2/3 international, where's that dot? And now the Barry White's really going, the wine's flowing, and he fills this up with dots, right? Now that line is not really there, but that line is what we call the efficient frontier. It's this, and I hate that name because it makes this sound so complicated, and it's not. This imaginary line, there's no dots north of it, and there's no dots to the left of it. And what that means is the dots that are right on the line historically for your goal, based on your goal, were the most efficient way you could have gotten there, right? So if we take VTSAX as that dot right there over the S, you've got two choices without doing your own financial plan. And I think you should start with your own plan, but you got two basic choices. Number one is we could move left to that dot that's by the line, even with it, but by the line. What does that mean? We get the same return, but took a lot less risk getting it. Who would be unhappy with less bounce in your portfolio, but the same return? Who's unhappy? Second thing we can do is if we're sleeping well at night, if you're sleeping great, you can go up to the line, which means not take any more risk, but you get a much higher return. Who thinks it would suck to have a higher return and no more risk? Right? So where you're going to be is neither one of those, though. If you start off with your expectation, begin with the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey. You're going to start with where do I need to be? You're going to look at where does that go? And then you're going to solve. The effects aren't small. When I went looking initially for this research several years ago, I realized I didn't have to reinvent the wheel because people like Paul Merriman, Rick Ferry have already done a lot of the research around the efficient frontier and how great it can be. Over long periods of time, you'll notice that the total US stock market and the S&P 500 end up very close to the same place. So Merriman looks at the S&P 500. If you look at the US stock market, it's still going to be very close to this. I don't know why he went 52 years. These are Merriman's numbers. Merriman, when he puts together these portfolios, is not a wizard. This is why I don't like using Merriman portfolios. I love Paul Merriman. I just think it's stickier if you build your own portfolio, because when things go wrong, which they always will, what you don't want to talk about is how this person isn't the guru we thought they were. All that Merriman's doing is getting closer to the efficient frontier. With that, 52 years, the total US stock market returned you 1.89 million. His all value portfolio, much closer to the efficient frontier, international US value. Small, mid-cap, large cap, $6.43 million. The effects are not small. This actually talks about two things. VTSAX and chill for your entire life. I want you to hear this correctly. It will get you there. 1.89 million doesn't suck on a single $10 million investment. We know you're going to get there, and you will be okay. All this portfolio closer, my big question is, what would you do with an extra $4.5 million? Now, here's the thing, and this is where I get pushback from people. I've had people tell me kind of the rest of my presentation here. They're like, Joe, it's not about the money. I have enough. When is it enough, right? Anybody see the old movie Wall Street? How many yachts can you water ski behind, Gordon? Right? I have enough. And I actually, at first I was polite about this too. And I'm really not polite. And I am a little bit judgy about this. When I hear somebody say that they have enough, my answer, very sarcastically, is, good for you. Good for you. I live in a community in Texarkana, Texas, where the average person makes $40,000 a year. They did not get the memo that coming here was the badass idea that it totally is. And this community exists. Most of these people have no idea what it means to have the knowledge that you already have just by being in this room. And think about if you had an extra $4.5 million to help your community, what you could do with that. You could help so many people get where they want to go, and you get to do it on your terms. And going back to my first thing about connections, you now have a goal that's bigger than you. We can do a lot if we just get more scientific with our investments, like we are scientific about every other piece of our financial plan. So those are the three. If you'd like to remember the slides or you want to sign up for our newsletter, this is the QR code. By the way, this is third-party software, so I'll tell you, there's a quick happy face quiz. Our newsletter, by the way, comes out once a week, and it is a 40% open rate, which we're very proud of. Kevin Bailey writes it, and I'm the editor. Kevin used to work for Vanguard and for TIAA, and we link to the best stuff that we find every week that kind of relates to what we're talking about on our podcast. But people open it, which we're very proud of, because I hate getting newsletters that I don't want to open. But I also have the slides. Sorry, I left the videos out. You got to find your own hilarious videos. What I did do, though, is I wrote commentary under the slides so you can remember exactly what we talked about. But on this third-party software, it says something like, get your free gift. The free gift is the slides. So don't forget to get your free gift. I told if I could change that wording, I would change it. All right. I want to end here because what we're talking about here today and what every speaker is going to talk about and why I'm so effing happy that you're here, because you are my people, as you know. Those of you that know me, I love being in this room. But you want to be like David Allen said. David Allen, the organizational expert, said, you want to be like water. And if life is flowing one way, you want to be able to flow this way. If life is flowing this way, you want to be able to flow this way. And you want to make this beautiful music. We want to create this beautiful life. And to do that, we're going to change the math. We're going to be a little bit more scientific, but we're not going to spend a lot of time. And we're going to focus on connections in these meaningful moments like we're having here yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I'm going to leave you with one more TikTok minute. I'm not even going to ask you guys. This is not air quotes brilliant. I think this is brilliant. This is journalist Chris Wallace with John Batiste.
So can you show us how you can break a barrier, a musical barrier, go from one genre to another?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we were just messing around, being that we're at Juilliard, you know, Beethoven, you know. But you know, the blues. The gospel.
That is amazing.
That is an amazing. Let's have an amazing economy, everybody. Thank you.